Okay, everybody, and of course, good morning to you. Welcome inside this new segment here on New Era TT Radio. Inside the 11 o'clock hour, it is time for Exploring Buddhist Concepts. Kasi is a little under the weather, as I said earlier on, but Graham is filling in for him this morning. Graham has been here before.
Good morning, Sir Charles. Can you hear me okay?
Okay.
Sir Charles,
Right. I think I had a little noise was coming in there. I just wanted to get rid of it. So, Graham, good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning, Sir Charles. It's nice to be here. I hope you can hear me okay.
I'm hearing you. I'm getting a little distortion on you. I don't know if it's the internet. I know how the internet can play tricks with us these days. It's given a lot of problems. I think it's because of all the things that are happening in the Caribbean right now.
Well, that could be, but I am also in a position where I have one neighbor with a pressure washer and the other neighbor with a pressure washer and the third neighbor building a roof. So I have retreated to my car.
Oh, okay. All right.
Try
Look,
to get a little silence. But is my audio okay?
yeah. It's I said it's a little better, but we just as you keep the voice up, we will be okay.
All right. Well, I'll do my best. But
No
please have
problem. But welcome, and we are glad to have you.
Thank you very much. So I'm standing in for Cassie this morning. Poor Cassie is not doing well. He is in hospital at the moment, and I understand he's scheduled for surgery in the next couple of days. So I honestly do hope that the surgery will take care of his issues and that he will bounce back to good health and be back on the radio soon.
I myself.
So, typically as Buddhists, what we would do is offer up the merit of a talk like this to Cassie's quick recovery, because we think that anytime the Buddha Dharma is discussed by people who have an earnest wish to relieve suffering for themselves and all beings, that there are good things that flow out of talks like that, out of sessions like that. And we call that merit, and we can assign the merit if you like. And in this case, I would like to suggest that we assign it to Cassie in hopes of a quick recovery for him. So let me also say good morning to your listeners. I haven't done that as yet, so I hope everyone finds this coming hour useful. And I have selected a topic without really being able to talk about it with Kasi because of his problems. So I honestly hope that it is not a repetition of anything he might have done. I'm going to talk about a specific Buddhist concept called refuges. And I want to explain what that term means over the next 45 minutes. Okay?
Okay, go ahead. So all yours.
Good. All right. Well, let's get started, and then at the end of it, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try my best to answer them. So, refuge is what we're talking about today, and this concept of refuge is a fundamental one in Buddhism. It's connected with something that I think also applies in a way to every single religious tradition, and even to ordinary people who would not consider themselves religious. And that is really a need to find a purpose in our lives. When you think about it, everyone has these internal questions. What is it that I really want? What is the highest goal that I want to realize? What is my ultimate dream? And when we ask ourselves these kind of questions, it helps us identify a purpose of our lives, whatever it is we most want to achieve, that would benefit not just ourselves, but our loved ones, and in fact, our families, our communities, our societies, the whole world. What is it we really want to achieve? And when you start considering questions like that very quickly, we could all probably agree on a basic wish, let's say. I don't want, and a basic wish might be, look, I don't want anything bad to happen to me. And I don't want any suffering. I don't want any problems. I don't want any pain. And I want to find peace and joy and enjoy good experiences. We all want that. And if there was no suffering in this world, no problems, no pain, and only happiness, only peace, only joy, well, we'd be we'd be really happy, wouldn't we? That's the sort of basic wish that I think everyone on this planet shares. So that brings us to the question as to whether that is in fact possible. Is there any possibility of our having some kind of state of mind or experience like that? Could all the suffering that we encounter in our lives be eradicated? Could all our problems be solved? I think we know the answer, but I'll get into it. You know, here here you can find something encouraging to consider. According to the Buddhist teachings, based on the personal experience of the Buddha himself, and probably also in accordance with all great spiritual masters from all traditions, yes, there is a possibility of finding a way to free ourselves from all the suffering and misery that we experience as we go through life. Now, the Buddha himself, he talked about this in terms of what we call the Four Noble Truths, and I'm sure Cassie has covered that in a previous talk. The Buddha observed that we experience problems and suffering, and that these sufferings, they have a cause, or they have more than one cause. Sometimes they have many causes, but that these causes can actually be rectified. We can set them right, and if we set them right, then the problems will go away, they'll cease. So we can see in this way that there is a possibility of an experience or a realization that is available to anybody, not just an enlightened Buddha. In Buddhism, we call this realization enlightenment. We also have a Sanskrit word for it. We call it bodhi, which it's based on a Sanskrit word which means to know or to understand or to see clearly or to awaken. So when we talk about bodhi as a noun, we mean knowledge or understanding, we mean wisdom, we mean awakening. And the understanding and awakening we're talking about is not something that was only achieved by one person, this great Buddha that we refer to. We sometimes the Buddha himself, we have a name for him. We call him the Tathagata, and that was a word that he actually applied to himself. Again, a Sanskrit word, and Tathagata means, well, Tatha, the first part, means like them, and the second part, Gata, means gone. So the whole word Tathagata means one who has walked the same way that others have passed. And what the Buddha is saying here is that he's not the first one, but that he has experienced and understood in the same way as other great enlightened beings of the past have done. So he is just one in an endless succession of people that have seen reality, that have seen the truth, that have become enlightened. And that's good news for all of us because it means that becoming a Buddha is not an achievement that is totally new or unique to one person, but it's something that is in fact it's possible for every being who understands clearly and sees or experiences directly how things actually are. And the point we're making here is that everyone has that potential. It's not easy, and very few people actually achieve it, but it is available to everybody. And the harder you try, the greater the likelihood you have of seeing that enlightenment. So, that is the main understanding from the Buddhist perspective that there is a possibility to free ourselves from misery, from suffering, to find joy, to become enlightened. It's not easy for us to understand that because we think this is something reserved for special people and that it is out of our reach. But how strongly we can understand it and have confidence in it, it depends on many factors. But we can start by developing some confidence based on just a little bit of understanding or feeling that things can change, however they are, for us in our lives, however bad they might be. Things can change, and also internally, we can transform ourselves. Uh, some kind of transformation can be possible, uh, and if we bring that about, then we can improve our lives. And that's a good thing to know because if it weren't so, why would we bother doing anything? Ask anybody working on a spiritual path or attempting any kind of self improvement, and they must have a feeling that change is possible, that transformation is possible. Because if they didn't think it was possible, there'd be no sense in doing anything. So that's the good news. Transformation is possible. From the Buddhist point of view, we can describe what it means to be a Buddha very simply by simply saying that a Buddha is somebody who has increased or developed his or her wisdom and compassion fully to the absolute utmost. And if we chose to describe it more complicated, we could go on for hours and hours and hours. But it's as simple as this: whoever has fully developed their compassion and wisdom, that person can be called a Buddha. And that is available to any of us. Okay, so how do we know that it's possible for each of us to develop that compassion and wisdom? Well, the traditional answer is that all beings have within them the seeds of compassion and wisdom, even if they're not immediately obvious. Even the most cruel, unkind person you've ever met in your life, however evil they may appear to be, there's got to be somewhere inside of that individual a little soft corner, a little bit of compassion, a little bit of love for someone special in their lives. We know that to be true. Even if on the outside they radiate evil, there is always something inside there that is softer, that is full of compassion. And what we're talking about is finding that and developing it and maturing it. And so that applies to every being, and not just human beings, all sentient beings, the Buddhists would say, but particularly human beings. However dull or confused they might be, they have some sense of right and wrong, and that sense of right and wrong is actually the basis of wisdom. So, where there's that little bit of that quality present, it can be cultivated, it can be increased, and where that little seedling of compassion is, we can turn that into wisdom, we can develop it. And in that way, we can bring about transformation for everybody, no matter how rough and evil they may appear to be on the surface. It is possible for all beings. Now, we can think about this in terms of the Buddhist idea of refuge, which is what I wanted to talk about today. In Buddhism, we talk about refuge with regard to three things: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And the definition, the traditional definition of a Buddhist practitioner, we say a person becomes a Buddhist by taking refuge in these three jewels, as they're called: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And and when you first hear that, you might think that taking refuge, oh, that's some kind of vow you take when you start to become a Buddhist. And therefore it's something that beginners do. But that is not true at all. Taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha for us is actually the whole practice of Buddhism. And I'm going to explain that a little bit. So, that term, going for refuge, it can sound odd to people that are not familiar with it. For example, we think about refuge like we say things like seeking a place of refuge or a refugee seeking a safe place. And when we say, I take refuge in the Buddha, it can sound as if we're saying, oh, Buddha, please save me, give me strength, give me support, as though we were pleading with the Buddha or we were praying to the Buddha. But the way we use the word, it is not like that. It's more like making a decision based on the conviction that we recognize there is a potential for Buddhahood or enlightenment. I recognize that that potential exists within me and that it's possible for me to realize or awaken to this potential. And then I decide I want to do that. And taking refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, is actually making a commitment to take that as my goal, to develop my own innate compassion and wisdom to the highest level that I can during this lifetime. So that is the three refuges in a nutshell. And I'm just going to spend the rest of this talk explaining them in a little more detail. We will start with the first one, which is the most important one, which is the Buddha refuge. It's said that if you go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, then you're a Buddhist, and as long as you are doing that, you are practicing Buddhism. But, what does that really mean, right? To go for refuge to the Buddha. Again, like I just said, it's not praying, oh Buddha, please have mercy on me, please save me, and then thinking, all right, that's done, I'm okay. I've said my prayers and now I can get on with life. That's not the idea. That may be praying in a kind of way, but it's not going for refuge. Going for refuge to the Buddha is something else. It's finding a direction. It's finding a purpose. It's saying, I want to become free of all suffering, and I want to find lasting happiness and joy. And I want to achieve this for the benefit of all sentient beings, not just myself. I recognize that if I do this, I will be in a position to help others do the same. So my vow is actually carrying everyone with me to achieve this perfect place. And it's possible for me to do it, I know, and therefore I resolve to do it, and that is my real ultimate goal. And that's what the act of taking refuge is. So that means that we now have a sense of direction very clearly, and we maintain that direction. Some of us may move along it quickly, some of us may move a lot more slowly, but we are all traveling along that path in that direction. So when we say that we want to be free of all our suffering and find lasting peace and happiness, we're acknowledging the possibility of being able to achieve it, right? That is a fundamental understanding. It's within us, it's not out there, it's something that we can develop. And that's why we need, when we get on this path, to have some understanding of the Four Noble Truths as a basis for taking that refuge. And just to cover them again, I know Kasi has covered them in the past. There is suffering. There are the causes of suffering, and if I understand that these causes are changeable or can be removed, then I know there's a possibility of changing my experience. If I understand that, then I have the confidence in the possibility of being able to achieve my goal. So even if I don't yet have the total experience, if I don't have the total understanding, from wherever I begin, from whatever little experience I already have, I can see the possibility of freedom and I can get started. So, to discuss this properly, let's look at a little bit of basic Buddhist understanding and philosophy. Let's step back a bit. We all want happiness. I began this talk by pointing that out. That is what we're all looking for, every one of us in our own way, no matter who we are. Everyone is looking for happiness, for ourselves and for our loved ones. But too much wanting is itself a problem. We want this happiness, but all that wanting, I want to be happy, I want to be successful, I want to be healthy, I want to be popular, I want to be rich, I want. Because I want these things so much, then even if I achieve them, I find that the problem hasn't actually gone away. I still have a fear and a dread. The stuff I have, I'm afraid of losing it. And because of this fear, I'm not completely happy. And therefore, I'm still suffering, if you like. The fear itself is a kind of suffering. And then, of course, bad things happen. We can't stop it. They are going to happen to us. And when something actually happens that I don't like, I fear and dislike what's happening, and the more I fear it and the more I dislike it, again, is the more I suffer. So, suffering follows us around like a shadow, if you like. And according to Buddhist understanding, the basis of that problem lies in our present way of experiencing ourselves, of experiencing our existence. I experience my existence in terms of this thing I call I, and then I relate to everything else as not I or other. So there's me here and there's other out there. And because of that view, I have to judge everything I encounter according to how it relates to me. Is it good for me? Is it not good for me? Is it friendly? Is it not friendly? Do I want it? Do I not want it? And so there's this dualistic way of looking at things. And because I see everything as either good or not good, I react to the good stuff with attachment and I react to the bad stuff with aversion. If it's nice, I want it and I run after it, if you like. I try and get more of it. Or if it's not so nice, I don't want it and I want to get rid of it. Or I want to run away from it. I don't want it in my life. And the basic idea here is that in the process of reacting in this way, we're always in some kind of conflict. We're either running to get stuff or we're running away from stuff. We're always agitated. There is always this sense of unease there. And how then can we ever find peace? If everything we encounter is seen as either something we want to get or something we want to get rid of, how can we ever rest? And sometimes it becomes like that with everything we meet. And you may not immediately agree with that on hearing it the first time, because this is such a natural way of living. We've done it since we were babies. We've come to accept it as perfectly normal. And it's not until you start to actually look, or even better, you take up a practice like meditation, which allows you to look deeply, that you start to see the truth of this. And then you realize that the whole quality of life becomes this grabbing onto or pushing away. Um, and with that comes a lot of pain, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of suffering. In this way, it is actually the source of the problem. This wanting and this pushing away is all based on the way I see myself in relation to everything else. My sense of self and of the realness of things is really, really strong. But if we look into it deeply, it's very difficult to pinpoint exactly what is I and what is other. And again, this is a basis for the type of meditation we do. For example, I can say, this is me, and I point at my body. This body is me, and that body over there is other, or everything outside of this body is other. But if I look more deeply at the body, in terms of its parts, for example, I can see it's not so simple. For example, my hand is part of my body, and I can say, this is my hand. But if I lose my hand, or if I imagine losing my hand, then somehow my hand is not me anymore. Me is still here. And in a way, the hand was never really me. We say it was my hand, as though it belonged to me. It wasn't me, it was a possession, if you like. And it's actually like that with all components of the body, right down to the smallest cells. And that's a bit of a mind blow statement to make. And it's not easy to accept straight off the bat because, again, we've spent lifetimes thinking that this thing here, this body, this is what I am. This is me, and everything outside of it is not me. But the beginning of wisdom is to look inward and look at that stuff and then start to see it for what it really is. You know, if we think of the body as just my body, for example, then where is this me that is the owner of the body? Just as the body is not one indivisible thing, but is based on many, many parts, my hand and everything else, this me also is not really one thing, but it's a concept. It's based on a whole bunch of things. What I call me is usually my body and my mind, and there's nothing else. But although my body seems to be very solid, it's a single solid unitary thing, it's composed of many parts and elements and is changing all the time. What I call mind is my awareness. It's that thing which knows this is me and this is other. But what is the nature of that awareness? If we go deeply into it, we can see that our awareness or our consciousness can't be found. You look, you will find thoughts, you will find feelings, you will find emotions, and these things all come and go. But that background consciousness, we can't find it. Some people say consciousness is a brain or a function of the brain, but the brain is local. It's limited in space and time. It's locked up inside the head, while the mind itself, is not local. It's not limited. With the mind, you can see everything. If your mind is clear, you can see through space and time. So, although it's functioning through the brain at the moment, we can't limit mind to the brain. And consciousness is subtle, it's not something you can find or grasp. And if there's nothing to find or hold on to, then there's nothing to be destroyed. And this is the key point. So as we continue looking carefully, we find that at the end of what we call me, then starts something that we call mine, and the two are closely related. Sometimes mine even hurts more than me. For example, I'll give you a good example. I got a brand new phone the other day, and I had only had it one day when I dropped it down some steps, and it broke. And so if you own something you value greatly, like a brand new phone, and you break it, you feel pain, right? Yes. So mine is very closely related to me. It's almost identical in a way. So although we have a very strong habitual identification of ourselves and everything else, if we look at it more deeply or more philosophically, if you like, it's not that easy to define. It's, and that may be difficult for us to see at the moment, but we can understand that our very strong sense of the clear cut identity of me is just a concept. It's a concept that we've created since we were babies. It's a concept we hold on to with all our lives right now, but it's just a concept, this thing called me. And I'm not trying to say that we don't exist, and nor am I trying to say that there's some kind of undifferentiated oneness and we're part of that. We're not trying to deny that things exist, but we're trying to come to grips with the way in which they exist, or if you like, their fundamental nature. And when we really investigate carefully, we will discover at the end that there are no identifiable, completely independent, self existent entities. Everything that we experience, everything that we see, our bodies, our minds, everything arises and passes away. And not only that, everything is dependent on causes and conditions. It's connected to everything else. So, impermanence and interdependence are the two concepts that characterize everything we experience. In a way, it's a bit like our experience in dreams. You see dream objects and you can almost see them in your dream and touch them, and they appear vividly and they seem very real. But when we wake up, they realize they weren't really there. And the actual life we experience is a bit like that. And yes, there is a kind of waking up that we can do, which allows us to see them as they really are. Let me just take a sip of water. So, what is the point of going into all of this? Well, the point I'm trying to make with all of this talk is to help you understand that our habitual way of reacting with this grabbing or pushing away, the aversion and attachment, it's not the only way to live. It's not inevitable. It's actually quite possible to stop the process of chasing after things and running away from things, which we think of as not me but other. And all our fear and attachment are coming from the thought that this I can be harmed or destroyed. But if we gain an understanding of what our true nature really is, we can see there's really nothing to be destroyed. And when we see that there's really nothing to be destroyed, then the fear dissolves. And when the fear dissolves, the attachment and the aversion, that goes too. And then now there is no need to run away from or to run towards anything. No more grasping, no more pushing away, no more chasing, no more denying. So we need to understand then that attachment and love are not at all the same. When we say we love something, often what we really mean is that we are attached to it. And attachment is something that is created by fear, and love is created without fear. There is a fundamental difference between the two. So when we're free from fear, then we can experience love rather than attachment. We can experience compassion. And we find that compassion always accompanies wisdom. And wisdom in this concept means, when I say wisdom, wisdom in this context means understanding the way things really are. So in Buddhism, we always talk about wisdom and compassion together. And when we see very deeply that our true nature is, with our true nature, it's such that there is nothing to be destroyed and there's nothing to be grasped, then there's no need to be afraid, no need to keep struggling with everything, no need to suffer, no need to be selfish or self seeking, no need to fight to get things for ourselves. So we're a little more free to work then for the benefit of others. And when we lose our fear, then compassion arises. So wisdom and compassion are related, and compassion actually arises only from wisdom. What is wisdom here? It's difficult to imagine what it would be like to be free from this grabbing onto things and pushing away from things. And sometimes people think that if you stop doing that, you really stop living. You become dull, you become lifeless. But according to the Buddha, it's actually an experience of huge clarity and vibrancy, which is why terms like wisdom, clear light, luminosity are used to describe it. So when we've done away with our underlying fear, then there's freedom. And when wisdom and compassion are fully realized, that's enlightenment. We have no further to go. It's right there. So again, Buddha, becoming a Buddha, it's not something that we achieve or we gain from the outside. That's why it's called enlightenment, because it means seeing that it was always there and had been overlooked. We didn't realize it was so, but now we see the truth. That's the way it is, and that's realizing. So It's a wonderful concept that this thing is already latent within us, and all we're trying to do is wake it up. And once you see that, you recognize that we can all be free of suffering, because the solution that we're talking about here is entirely an inner solution. We're not talking about trying to change the world. We're not trying to get rid of the things out there we don't like or to grab onto the things we do. We're only talking about changing our own way of perceiving and our own way of reacting. So, exploring the possibility of working with this becomes very important, because that's how we can find lasting peace and happiness. And that is what I want for myself. That is what we all want for ourselves and for others. That's what we all really aim for, whether we recognize it or not. But it's something we have to experience rather than just think about. It's not easy because, as I've said, the way of seeing and reacting we've had since childhood. It's become so ingrained that it's habitual, it's second nature, and to change our fundamental way of perceiving things is actually very, very difficult. It takes a lifetime of practice. But that lifetime of practice can become a long term goal. And that is what we do when we take refuge. We understand that the possibility of finding freedom within myself, and therefore wanting it for myself and wanting it for others, and then taking that as our purpose. That is what we mean by taking refuge. Discovering a purpose is maybe the most important thing we can do. If we have a purpose, we have a dream, we can find a way. But if we have no purpose, we don't know who we are or where we're going, and we get lost. And so that's why, from a Buddhist point of view, it's the first, it's the most important, it's a fundamental step. It's gaining that purpose in our lives and then working towards it. So that is going for refuge to the Buddha. It includes both our inner conviction and the possibility of enlightenment and our wanting to realize it. Now, the second refuge is refuge in the Dharma. And the Dharma is the way or the path shown by the Buddha. We can say that if the Buddha was a teacher, because he was the man who actually discovered this teaching, who achieved enlightenment, and then spent his life telling others about it. Well, if the Buddha is the teacher, then the Dharma was his teaching. Or if the Buddha is the person who has traveled along the path, say, then the Dharma is the roadmap that he has drawn us to follow. So we know it's possible because he achieved it, and now we know how because he spent the rest of his lifetime telling us about it. The Dharma is the way. It's the experience of the Buddha or of anyone who has explored their way to enlightenment. And there's not just one way, there are many ways. Anything that helps us to work on our understanding and our finding our true nature is the way. Dharma practice includes any method that helps us to work towards that awakening. And when we say we go for refuge to the Dharma, we're making a decision to try and understand and learn the methods by which we can become enlightened. So therefore we're taking on the teachings of the Buddha and trying to put them into practice to make them experiential. So for us, they're not just mind knowledge, we've actually had an experience of it. And that is what our practice is. There are two types of Dharma. One of them is the Buddha's teaching, or what we call scriptural Dharma, and the Dharma of experience or realization, which is the actual experiencing of the things that the Buddha was trying to teach us. And so there's a difference between talking about something and actually experiencing it. And the Dharma of experience has to depend on the teaching Dharma, but if you're not putting it into practice, if you're not working with it and trying to see for yourself, then you're not really experiencing the real Dharma. That's where it comes from. The teaching Dharma alone doesn't transform us. And unless we're transformed, we're not really practicing the Dharma, right? So the third refuge, just to finish up now, is what we call the Sangha refuge. If you remember, the triple jewel was taking refuge in the Buddha, taking refuge in the Dharma, and taking refuge in the Sangha. So, in order to fully go for refuge to the Dharma, we find that we also need to go for refuge to the Sangha, because the real experience of the Dharma comes from the Sangha. And the Sangha includes all the beings who actually have some experience of this practice. It's very broad. We also include the Buddha in the Sangha as someone who realized the Dharma fully, and we can receive it and gain understanding of it only from the Sangha, because the Dharma of experience can be found only in the beings who have actually taken these teachings and put them and worked on them until they have had some experiential understanding of them. We can read books, sure. We can read lots of books, but it is not the same as experiencing the Dharma. We need to receive that from teachers. And the realization is the important thing, not the mind knowledge that comes from books. Enlightenment is an experience. It's not a theory, it's not a concept, it's not an intellectual idea. So, understanding that we go for refuge to the Sangha means that we want to understand and practice, and we can see that we need to associate with and learn from the beings who have some experience of this thing. And on a more day-to-day level, we want to try and also create the environment for ourselves that makes the experience easy, right? If we're just trying to do it on our own, it's really, really tough. But if we're in the company of others who are also trying, then there's strength in numbers. And as human beings, we tend to be influenced by the people we associate with. So in the beginning especially, it's not enough just to promise ourselves we're going to try and practice the Dharma. We actually need to do something about creating an environment to support our resolve. And if we put ourselves in circumstances where the people around us are also training, they're also trying, they've also made a commitment, they've also taken refuge, then that really helps us um, by providing an environment that is perfect for our Dharma practice. So, that is about it. We can see how taking refuge in the three jewels encompasses the entire path. It's something we start with when we begin the practice of Buddhism, but it's fundamental to the entire practice right up to the end. All the Buddhist practice is included in the taking of refuge, and we say therefore that it is the definitive act of a Buddhist, and by that we mean that it is the basis of Buddhist practice, not so much in the sense of practice as a religion, but more as an inner journey, a spiritual inner journey. When we say Buddha, we're not just referring to the historical man who lived 2,500 years ago, or the little statue we have on our little altar with the yellow robes and the bump on the top of his head. But we're referring here to the realization of our own true nature. And that is a lifetime of practice, and that begins and ends with taking refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So, with that, I will wrap up my talk. Thank you for listening. I'm happy to take any questions you may have. And over to you, Sir Charles.
Thank you very much, Graham. And people, if you have any questions or you would like to ask Graham anything at this point in time, you can call us now 281 1315. That's 281 1315 as we get ready to wrap up this session in a couple of minutes' time. All right. So if you, as I said, if you need to do so right now. Yeah. Yeah. So while we wait on any, if we see if we get any calls coming through there, Graham, is there anything that you would like to summarize with all that you have put forward this morning? How do how does all of this apply to our everyday living?
A good way of maybe summing it up is, and this does it doesn't matter what spiritual tradition you're in or whether you are in no tradition whatsoever, is the fact that good stuff is going to happen to you, but it's going to go away again, and bad stuff is going to happen to you, and it's going to go away again. And
Hmm.
beginning to understand that perfectly, beginning to see how that works in practice, is the beginning of wisdom. Because once you understand that everything is a flow of life, good stuff and bad stuff, it comes and goes, it's like clouds drifting across the sky, then you begin to understand that these things are a part of life and they're not to be chased after or to be pushed away. How you respond to them becomes all important. And by understanding that they are impermanent, um, is the beginning of removing the importance that you attach to them, both good things and bad things. And when they're no longer important, you can live your life with so much more equanimity and so much less suffering. And that's the beginning of that. That's the key to a joyful life, right there. You don't have to take Buddhist vows or go off and meditate or anything. Well, meditation does help because it allows you to see it, but that is the beginning of wisdom, understanding how to react to all the things that life throws at you. So that's how I would summarize it, I think.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. Well, thanks very much, Graham, for sharing your time with us, and we look forward. I guess we'll be talking a little bit until Cassie gets back on track.
You're very welcome, Sir Charles. As you know, there are a number of us now helping out Cassie, so it may be someone else next week.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I do hope that Cassie's medical issues overcome swiftly and that he is back in short order.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
very
Okay.
good. Thank you, Sir Charles. Thank you, listeners. I've
Uh,
enjoyed talking my talk, and I hope that it helps trigger a little idea in the minds of somebody out there that they might be encouraged to give this thing a go, to have a look at their lives and how they treat with what happens in their life.
okay. Thank you very much, Graham. Thanks for being here this morning. All
Lovely.
right.
Thank you,
Remember,
Sir Charles.
this has been Exploring Buddhist Concepts right here on the Era TT Radio.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be happy. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease.